What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, hitting you guys with a live stream on this Wednesday evening. We want to talk about the New York Giants' interest in some top draft prospects, in particular, the prospects from LSU. So we do just kind of want to react to, how did Jaden Daniels look? How did Malik Neighbors look? How did the Giants look while they were scouting Malik Neighbors and Jaden Daniels and Brian Thomas Jr.? Worth also mentioning him there as another one of LSU's top prospects. But we know the Giants are doing their heavy research. We've got less than a month to go until the NFL draft. So we want to keep hitting you guys with these live streams and discussing all the different scenarios that could play out for the New York Giants. And of course, field your questions, answer your questions, and talk about any topics that you guys want us to discuss in this live stream. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you enjoy, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to our show on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, before I hand it off to you, Alex, I just want to say once again, thank you guys for 20,000 subscribers. This is our first live stream since hitting that milestone. This is not our 20K sub special live stream. Trust me, we've got something cooking for that. Probably happen in the next few weeks. We'll hit you with that live stream to celebrate the 20,000 subs. But on this one, I just want to say thank you once again. Really love and appreciate this community. You guys are ride or die. You know how often we publish, and you know how often you guys are here. Every single episode, we got thousands of you tuning in, and we really do appreciate you. Thank you so much for helping us hit 20,000 subscribers. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend?
Well, I'm doing fantastic, and LSU Pro Day, we got to see some pretty awesome players throw the ball, and Jaden Daniels catch the ball, and Malik Neighbors do run about a 4.35, 4.38, blazing speed. A lot of people say he was going to run in like the 4.5 range, and he destroyed that number with ease. This is a player that a lot of people are saying is the best prospect in this draft class, and if not, at the quarterback position, obviously, a couple of really great talents. He could be the best receiver, best position player in this class. And look, if the Giants don't land a quarterback, and this is my personal take, if the Giants do not land the quarterback that they want, the consolation prize of Malik Neighbors is an absolute gem of a situation to be in. You end up with Malik Neighbors, you probably get one of the best playmakers in the NFL on day one. This is a guy that has elite speed, elite playmaking ability. He's elite after the catch. And want to know what's even better than all that? He is 20 years old. And if you saw him, he's not this skinny kid. He is built. Like, he's a big dude. He's got some muscle on him, and he's still adding size to his frame. I'm really excited about Malik Neighbors. If the Giants don't get their quarterback, getting him, and if you don't get him, you get Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, come on. Like, could it be any better if you're the Giants right now in terms of, worst case scenario? You end up with a blue chip prospect, the son of Marvin Harrison. And then, of course, if not Malik Neighbors, it's a damn good spot to be in. And we're going to talk about Jaden Daniels, going to talk about Neighbors, going to talk about Brian Thomas, a guy who also, by the way, looked really good today. That speed is legit. He is fast as hell. Made a really nice catch. I mean, he was blazing down the sideline at one point, catching a pass from Jaden Daniels. I was really impressed by him. What I like about Jaden Daniels is his release. I mean, it's quick, it is fast, it's efficient. He gets the ball where it needs to be, and he doesn't need time to wind up. That thing is out, lightning fast. So I'm really excited to discuss, Jaden Daniels, what the probability is that we could potentially walk away with him in the draft. Obviously, not so high. We know the Washington Commanders are certainly intrigued by him. Obviously, Dan Quinn, you got Adam Peters over there. They like that. But I will say this, and I'll answer this question, Don. I don't prefer a receiver. I prefer a really good quarterback. But again, if we end up with Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm not going to be upset. But yes, I do prefer the quarterback. I love Jaden Daniels. He's my favorite player in this draft class. I think he's going to be an instant impact player with his legs, with his arm. He came out at 210 pounds. Would like to add a little bit more weight to that, but he's got really good height. And he's electric. Dude's he's humble. He's electric. He's a hard worker. He's really everything you want in a player. And I'm really excited to see where this conversation takes in terms of where the Giants could go with this and, who they might have been scouting at this LSU Pro Day, Anthony. But I'll get your take on Jaden Daniels, what you saw from him at the Pro Day, things you like about him. And do you think there's even a slight chance that he could find his way to the Giants? Obviously, I think we'd have to probably trade up to get him if he was there at 3 or 4.
Yeah, I still think there's a chance. I keep saying this with the quarterback position every year. About a month prior to the draft, we hear about all of these different guys and their draft stocks and where they're going to go. We always hear quarterbacks are going to fly off the board 1, 2, 3, 4. It usually never happens that way. And even though we always hear it, last year we heard, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, all these guys could go in the top 3 picks. didn't happen. We've heard it again in the past over and over and over. I feel like every single year we hear this, but it doesn't always happen. Sometimes it does, but it doesn't always happen. So I do think that there is a chance. There are some shocks on the day of the draft. Maybe New England decides, hey, we only like two of these guys, and the third guy available is not one of those two, so we're trading out. Maybe, teams just decide, hey, we don't want to give up the capital to trade up, or the teams that might be trading down refuse to trade down. A quarterback could still fall to the Giants at 6, and it absolutely could be J.J. McCarthy. It could be Jaden Daniels. Who knows who it will be? If it is Jaden Daniels and the Giants do draft him, I'd be happy with that. I think he's a really good quarterback prospect. I don't think he's without his faults, but I do like the way that he threw the football today at his pro day. His release was super fast, as you mentioned, Alex. His deep ball was money, as we always knew it was, because he was probably the best deep ball thrower in the country this past season. I think that's safe to say. He throws it really accurately deep downfield. And I thought that today he had some pretty good footwork put into his pro day throwing drills. I thought that was something that really was noticeable to me. He had a nice wide base, had active feet, and he was throwing the ball well. But of course, all that stuff is scripted. It's just the pro days. You can't really put too much stock into that. But what I do put stock into, Malik Neighbors and his athletic testing, because if you take a look at it, Alex, I'm not sure if you've seen the comparison, but Malik Neighbors is relative athletic score and all of his different measurables almost carbon copy exactly like Jamar Chase, which is obviously something to be excited about. And I love Jamar Chase when he was coming out of LSU. I love Malik Neighbors coming out of LSU. And you mentioned it, like he is well built on his frame. I've seen comparisons to Deebo Samuel for Malik Neighbors in the past. I think that those are fair. I think they're actually better comparisons than the ones that you get given to Malachi Corley. Malik Neighbors is more built to that size of a wide receiver with the run after the catch ability. I've said this to you before, Alex. Malachi Corley is actually built like a running back. I always think that Deebo Samuel, the way that he plays, a damn good receiver, just also happens to be built in the fashion where he can make plays after the catch. Malik Neighbors has that same ability. Neighbors is really, really good after the catch. He's really explosive. He came in with a faster 40-yard dash time than people expected. It didn't shock me because I thought he looked really fast during his time at LSU, but you mentioned how he would be the perfect consolation prize. I will agree with you. I think that Malik Neighbors is a tremendous talent. The Giants have two massive needs, in my opinion, going into the NFL draft. It's a franchise quarterback. It's an elite playmaker. If they don't land one, they need to land the other. And thankfully, they're sitting in the perfect position to at least do one of those two things with the number 6 overall pick. Alex, I think kind of a good way to turn this conversation is with Malik Neighbors versus these other wide receivers. How do you feel about, I'm actually going to lay out this scenario. I want to get your take on this in particular. Giants can't get the quarterback. They can't get Malik Neighbors. For some reason, Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. are both off the board. The Giants are picking at 6th overall. They've got the option of Joe Alt or Rome Odunze or trading down. What do you do in that situation? Do you feel like in terms of that being a good consolation prize to get a blue chip prospect at 6, is there a big drop off for you in terms of Malik Neighbors down to those other two guys? Is Joe Alt even on the board? I know that you're against taking a tackle with the top 6 pick. So how do you feel about that? Is that a situation where you would say, okay, I'm going to pivot and now trade down? Or maybe do you just run it, take Rome Odunze and feel great about that as well?
Rome Odunze is a very good player. I was just looking at one of the graphs to say success by route, the success by a route tree, like via route. It's green across the board. Like, I think the guy that makes them was like, this is the first time I've ever seen every single route as green for a wide receiver. Rome Odunze is one of the smoothest route runners, one of the best contested catchers in this draft class. He is a blue chip prospect. And at the end of the day, I love Malik Neighbors. And I wanted to touch on this for one split second. I've been trying to figure out what the pro comp is for Malik Neighbors, and nobody can really put a pinpoint on what it is. A lot of people say DJ Moore. Lance Zierlein thinks it's Justin Jefferson. Some people have thrown in like Jamar Chase, as you kind of said. Other people have thrown, I'm looking at Stephon Diggs on Reddit right now, and people are saying all different types of things. And to be honest with you, I think he's kind of a unique blend of a bunch of different players, which is really, really exciting. Like, he's got the twitchy movement of like Antonio Brown, but he's got the catch ability of DJ Moore, and he's just got a whole bunch of elite traits. Like, and you know me, like my goal in the mid rounds is to find a player with two elite traits, because you can't find mid round picks with like a bunch of elite traits. Malik Neighbors has elite hands, elite speed, elite route running, elite yards after the catch. The guy has 4 or 5 elite traits, and he's a great kid. So and he's 20 years old, so he's young too, which is another, I would say, elite trait, because he's that good at this age. Like, you're not going to find a player with more checks on the boxes than Malik Neighbors. Rome Odunze, a little bit older, but it's nothing to be concerned about by any means. And he is an elite route runner, elite contested catch guy. He's not as good as Malik Neighbors is after the catch, but he's still more than competent. I'm happy taking taking Rome Odunze if he's there. But I will say this. If the Giants had a chance to move back and we ended up with Brock Bowers and another first round pick, like let's say Minnesota moved up to 6 and we had and they wanted to give us 11 and 23, I would be more than happy ending up with Brock Bowers, who I think is going to have an equal, especially with the way that tight ends are now utilized in today's NFL. Great teams and like Super Bowl caliber teams have great tight ends. You know what I mean? Like, look at all the teams that have great tight ends: Sam Laporta, George Kittle, Travis Kelce. You know, you can even throw in Dallas Goedert's a really great tight end. Dalton Schultz is a good tight end. You know, they all have good receiving tight ends, and Brock Bowers is going to be better than probably a good portion of those guys, aside from like Travis Kelce, obviously. But I think he could be better than George Kittle at the end of the day. I think he could be better than some of these guys. And that's really exciting. Like, he could be a significantly talented aspect to this offense. And then 23, maybe you can reinforce another position. So, if it's just Odunze that I'm having to decide between, I'd be a little bit more inclined to move back. Brian, you just said it in the chat right here. Brock Bowers and AD Mitchell, I like that. Like, that's a really good secondary kind of move here. So I think that I'd be okay with the Brock Bowers and AD Mitchell over a Rome Odunze. What are your thoughts about that? I think that that's not a bad constellation. If you don't go for the one player, you get the elite tight end prospect, generational, some would say, and then you get a really solid wide receiver that has that upside to be a WR1. And AD Mitchell doesn't have that like after the catch playmaking ability. But AD Mitchell's like, some people have him top 5, top 3, top 4 receivers in this draft class. Like, he's that good in some people's eyes. I don't have him there. I have him at 4 or 5, but that doesn't mean he can't be a WR1 in this league. And ultimately, I do believe that the Giants will have an opportunity to make some moves if their preference is not there at 6.
Yeah, if you're asking me how I feel about that projected trade down, draft those 2 players, personally, and no disrespect, Brian, I think that that's living in fantasy land. The Giants are not ending up with 2 first-round picks in this draft. They're not trading down with the Minnesota Vikings. If the Giants are trading down with the Minnesota Vikings, that would make no sense because the Giants clearly want a quarterback, have kind of tipped their hat in many ways, are targeting a quarterback. Even if they don't like the quarterback on the board, they won't be the team that trades down and gives another team a quarterback while they need a quarterback. That would just not look good. If anything, they would just stick and pick, in my opinion, and take a player. The dreams of trading down with the Minnesota Vikings, I don't think they're going to happen. That's fantasy land to me. The Vikings are either going to trade all the way up to 4, 5. They're not even going to call the Giants at 6 in my eyes because they know that the Giants want a quarterback. They're not trying to tip their hat and tell them who they want and have to have that kind of negotiation with the Giants. Hey, Giants, which quarterback do you want? Well, we want this one. That makes things difficult in the negotiation room. I don't think that there's any chance the Giants are winding up with 2 first-round picks in this year's draft. So trading down, I think you're getting Brock Bowers and then a second-round pick, and that second-round pick, it's not going to be AD Mitchell. It's not going to be Brian Thomas Jr. Those guys are going to go off the board in the end of the first round. So while this would be amazing, I just don't think that it's realistic or possible. So I would love to get Brock Bowers in the middle rounds if we could. But to be honest, Alex, if we were to trade down into the middle of the first round, I would rather a guy like Terrion Arnold or Cooper DeJean. I would go cornerback over Brock Bowers at tight end personally. I just think that there's more positional value in having that cornerback. I don't necessarily think that trading down and taking Brock Bowers is the best take there or the best idea. So I would go cornerback instead. I love this cornerback class. I think it's super underrated. Even if you trade down even further, and you want to go cornerback in round 2, if you get that extra second round pick, you're probably going to get a stud there as well. So I know we've praised Brock Bowers in the past. I really do like him, but I do have concerns about his size. And I do think that in terms of those can't miss prospects at positions of value, I'm going CB over tight end almost every single time in that regard. But it is a deep wide receiver class. So if you're trading down and getting an extra second round pick, an extra third round pick, you maybe can find that value. I don't think you're getting a Bowers and an AD Mitchell or Brian Thomas Jr., but maybe you trade down, you get somebody in the middle round, and then you get one of those other second round wide receivers. Xavier Worthy might make it out of the first round. Some of those guys, Xavier Legette, you guys know how I feel about him. So it'll be interesting to see how the draft board shapes out. But trading down with the Vikings, I don't think is something that's going to happen. Trading down, however, maybe it could happen. There are definitely teams who are vying to get inside of the top 6. So I want to take a look at this one because there's a little bit of a stir in the comments while I was discussing this. Don Quixote saying, how much is it too much to trade with the Patriots, Dexter Lawrence for 3rd overall, and Jaden Daniels or Drake May? Dexter Lawrence is one of probably two players on the New York Giants roster that's completely untouchable. Maybe one of three, probably one of two. The Giants don't have that many probably untouchable players. Dexter Lawrence is one of them, Andrew Thomas being the other. There's no way that Dexter Lawrence gets traded no matter what.
Yeah, there's no shot. There's no shot. I would actually like cry tears of sadness if Dexter Lawrence was traded. There's no chance. There's more of a likelihood of Kayvon Thibodeau being traded than Dexter Lawrence. You don't trade guys like that in their prime. Look, I don't think we're trading any of those guys. We're going to trade draft capital, and that's about it, in my opinion, unless like it's some toss-ins that really doesn't make that much of a difference. But, going back to the LSU Pro Day here and talking about Jaden Daniels, because you know me, I love to talk a little bit about Jaden Daniels. This guy, if the Giants were lucky enough to draft him, I think would change everything at MetLife Stadium. You bring Jaden Daniels into the spotlight and you watch him perform. You know what I mean? Like, you watch him dominate good teams. You watch him perform at a high level without skipping a beat. And if you're the Giants and you want a downfield oriented offense and you want to throw the ball deep, you want a guy that can put the ball in the breadbasket. Jaden Daniels proved he could do it over and over and over again. Of course, he had really good receivers, but Jalen Hyatt and, of course, Darius Slayton have elite speed. How many times have we seen Darius Slayton wide open downfield and like nobody around him, or somebody missed the throw, whether it be Tommy DeVito or Tyrod actually was pretty damn good for us. But and you've made this comp before. I think that Jaden Daniels can be a much better version of Tyrod Taylor in terms of his arm talent, his placement, his health. And Tyrod's had some weird injury history, like got punctured lung from somebody, like giving him some sort of injection. I don't even know. Like, he's had some weird injury stuff, but he also, like, every time they touch him, he gets hurt. So I think Jaden Daniels, with his legs, with his mobility, and with his intelligence, his work ethic, could be something truly special. However, and I'll throw this out there, Anthony, a couple days ago, was it Tom Pelissero said that the Commanders were actually considering taking JJ McCarthy at number 2. Some executives believed that they could take JJ McCarthy second overall. And apparently there was a lot, like the entire New England contingency was there at LSU today watching Jaden Daniels, but they're also going to go watch Drake May. They also saw Caleb Williams, and they're also seeing JJ McCarthy. They already saw him. So, like, they're really doing their homework on quarterbacks here. But is there a world where I think personally that Jaden Daniels or Drake May could be there at 4? And if that's the case, are you doing whatever it takes to trade up? Are you like, yeah, we're moving up? If Jaden Daniels or Drake May are there at 4, you're like, giving up a future first-round pick to Arizona, and Arizona then ends up with Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. at 6, which I think is more valuable than moving back to 11 and 23. If you're Arizona, you end up with the blue chip guy that you want at receiver, and you end up getting Drake May or Jaden Daniels if you're the Giants. Are you cool with trading some draft capital to get him? I think that Arizona probably would prefer to stay within the top 6.
If there's a quarterback on the board that I like at number 4, yes, I'd trade up, but I'm not doing anything necessary to move up there, as you said. And this is kind of where we disagree a little bit on certain things. I really do like Jaden Daniels. I might give up anything to move up for Drake May at 4. I wouldn't give up anything to move up for Jaden Daniels at 4. And that's just because I view those prospects differently in terms of who has a higher ceiling, a higher floor, all that stuff combined, who I think is a better player and will be a better pro. I'd move more for Drake May than I would for Jaden Daniels. If the price tag is too high for Jaden Daniels, I probably would walk away. But if it is Drake May who's on the board at number 4, I'm probably willing to give up just about anything. So, but I don't feel that way for Jaden Daniels. So I do think that it comes down to which quarterbacks you like and how you feel about them. And that's what it's going to come down to for the New York Giants, because it's easy for us to say you've got to trade up and go get a franchise quarterback. But Joe Shane, Brian Dable, and all their talent evaluators, maybe they don't view Jaden Daniels as a franchise quarterback. Maybe they don't view Drake May as a franchise quarterback. But if they do view those guys as franchise quarterbacks, then yes, you make the trade up 2 spots. I think that you make a good point there where if you're looking at the Arizona Cardinals, why would they want to drop all the way from 4 down to 11? But I will play a little bit of devil's advocate here and say if they do trade down with the Vikings move up to 4, Cardinals down to 11, it wouldn't shock me if you saw the Cardinals trade down from 11 and back up to around 7 or 8, maybe 5, get that wide receiver that they want as well. We saw them do that just last year. They traded down with the Texans, then they traded back up, got the guy that they wanted anyway. Wouldn't be surprising to me if the Cardinals traded down, they traded back up. I think that's totally possible. But if you are the New York Giants and you're sitting there at 6, the quarterback that you like is on the board at 4, yeah, you're calling the team at 4 and you're trying to get your franchise quarterback. However, easier said than done. Got to see how the board falls, got to see who's the willing trade partner, but we'll ultimately see how that shapes out on draft night. Super chat here from Mateus Felipe Lacerda. Hope I said that right. Thank you so much for the super chat. What do you guys think about drafting Ja'Tavion Sanders at pick number 70? Even if we get a wide receiver at number 6, I think tight end is a low-key need to the Giants, and Sanders could fill that need. Greetings from Brazil. Greetings. That's awesome. Very far away from home, but appreciate you tuning in here. Ja'Tavion Sanders, I haven't delved into him too much, but at 70, that sounds like really good value to me from what I do know about Sanders and what I've seen from his skill set. And also, just because you said there, you think tight end is a low-key need for the Giants. I actually think it's a massive need, and no disrespect to Daniel Bellinger. I think he's a really good player, but I don't think that he's necessarily ready to be the number one receiving threat potentially in this offense. If the Giants aren't able to land a wide receiver early, they're going to need to make sure that they have a solid tight end group as well as their decent wide receiver core. So Ja'Tavion Sanders at 70 sounds like good value to me. I'd have to know who else is on the board, but I wouldn't be upset with that pick at all. I think that it would be a solid one.
I'm not going to lie. I don't know much about Ja'Tavion Sanders, but I had 682 yards last year, 2 touchdowns, 15.2 yards per reception. He aligned a lot in line. So 63.9% of his snaps were in line, and he did spend 15% out wide and 20.8% in the slot. So he has some versatility. Kind of reminds me a little bit of, how the Giants, I guess not even really like Darren Waller at all. Waller spent a lot more time in the slot, even spent a little bit out wide, very rarely in line. But I do like that Ja'Tavion has spent some time out wide in the slot as well. So you can use him a little bit more, diversified rather than Bellinger really is just going to be an inline tight end. Does clearly have some receiving qualities. He ranked in the top percentile in yards run per route, contested catch rate. He didn't drop a single pass last year. His receiving grade, according to PFF, was very, very high. He ranked 7th among tight ends with 7 contested catches last season. So that's pretty solid. He had 7.7 yards after the catch per reception, which tied for 18th. He had some really, really good games. Notably against Baylor last year, he had 110 yards in one of those games against Oklahoma State in one of the playoff games. He had 105 yards and a touchdown. Maybe this is a sneaky option for the Giants to add a pretty solid pass catcher at the tight end position. So yeah, I do think the Giants should be looking to draft someone that I do think that this is someone that maybe the Giants should be looking to draft in terms of helping support the potential departure of Darren Waller. And look, Waller's kind of holding $7 million hostage right now. I tweeted this yesterday. Right now, the Giants are basically waiting to see if he's going to be retiring or not. And the truth is that if he retires, the Giants save a whole bunch of money. And you see, like Tre'Davious White, for example, just signed a deal up to $10 million yesterday, I think with the Rams, was it? And he's probably getting heavy incentives to reach that $10 million. So, the Giants, the options are dwindling. We need support there. We need a veteran. I don't necessarily know where they're going to go at this point in time. There's not that many options. There's a couple of older guys on the board, and we need a free safety. Maybe they're going to transition to Dane Belton there. I'm not necessarily sure. Honestly, I like Ja'Tavion Sanders. Think it would be a good tight end to add to this room, especially if Darren Waller goes. But, what are your thoughts right now, Anthony, in terms of if Darren Waller retires, do you think that the Giants will spend a mid-round pick, even a later round pick, on a tight end that specifically is known for catching passes, maybe with some developmental upside?
Well, that would fit the bill for Sanders. He's a vertical threat tight end, somebody who can stretch the field and make plays as a wide receiver. The only problem with Sanders is he is probably going to be a top 50 pick is how many view him. If you look at most draft boards, a lot of guys have him going in the top 50. And so I think that tight end is a need for the Giants. Is it something that they prioritize in the middle rounds? I'm not sure. But if the board falls properly, like a top 50 prospect falling to 70, like Ja'Tavion Sanders, then I think they'll take the player. However, I also think that the Giants are higher on guys like Lawrence Cager than we are. They seem to like him. They keep him around. They've brought him up from the practice squad many, many times. They've been continuing to develop him. So they might not view tight end as being this big need that we view it as. But I definitely would say it's time to prioritize taking a tight end in the middle rounds. I want to respond to this from Raymond. At the bottom, he said I'm a fool if I wouldn't take JD at 4. That's not what I said. I said that I would have a price cap on how much I would trade for Jaden Daniels versus Drake May, because I think Drake May is the better player. But I made it very clear that I would take both of those players at number 4 and trade up for both of them. I would just be willing to give up more for Drake May. And then my thing with Michael Penix Jr., and a lot of guys comment about Michael Penix Jr., and I just want to say my point on Michael Penix is that the Giants are not contemplating moving on from Daniel Jones because of the player that he is. According to John Mara, all the reports, they still believe in the player and their evaluation of him. They're trying to move on from him because of his injury history. If you're moving on from a quarterback because of an injury history, drafting a quarterback in the second round with a significant injury history to replace him is not really the right logic to follow, in my opinion. So I will just say that Michael Penix, I'm higher on him than Alex is, I think. I like Michael Penix. I think he could be a very solid professional quarterback. He's got a rocket of an arm. He's really good passing from the pocket. But because of that injury history, I don't think he's a fit for the New York Giants in particular, just because they're trying to move on from a quarterback with a injury history.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to list a couple of reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of Michael Penix. And look, I actually am of the crowd right now that I don't think the Giants should be taking a quarterback after the first round. Why? Because the probability of hitting on those guys is astronomically low. It's already low to begin with, even in the first round. But after the first round, unless you have a perfect situation and you have the perfect prospect to fit in like a Brock Purdy in an already built up 49ers team, and he was just very vastly underrated. I just don't think it's a good idea. And why? The Giants have plenty of needs that we need to address. And if the Giants don't go quarterback in the first round, they go receiver, we can use that 47th overall pick at a myriad of spots, whether it be cornerback, whether it be safety, whether it be any other position that you want to address. The reasons I don't like Michael Penix are pretty simple. And there's a bunch of them. He's older. He's had 2 major injuries, and on the MetLife turf, I do not trust him to stay healthy. The third reason, I don't trust the offensive line, the Giants offensive line, until proven otherwise. They're going to be bad until proven otherwise. And if he's getting hit, he's going to get destroyed. 4, we just signed a left tackle to a long-term deal just to switch the blind side of our quarterback. I don't like that at all. 5, he is awful out of the pocket. Michael Penix is one of the worst quarterbacks in this draft class when he's pushed out of the pocket. Anthony, actually, you sent me those numbers. And he is, like, we're talking horrendous bad, like one of the worst I've seen. It's not good. And, your guy, JJ McCarthy, is very good out of the pocket. Jaden Daniels is pretty good. Caleb's very good. The top quarterbacks are very good out of the pocket. I just don't see the upside here. You have a Dallas pass rush, for example, and you have Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence rushing Michael Penix, and they push him out of the pocket, and you have an aggressive cornerback like Trayvon Diggs. I am willing to bet you that Michael Penix is throwing multiple interceptions every year to Trayvon Diggs because he's getting pushed out of the pocket. He's making dumb decisions, over aggressive throws, and he's going to get picked off. That's what's going to happen. I mean, like the numbers suggest it. I think that he's probably not going to be very good on the Giants if the offensive line isn't very good. I think there's many different reasons you wouldn't take Michael Penix to the Giants. Combining all of them together, it's just a big flat no to me. If you're not taking a quarterback in the first round and a very strong class like this with the top 4 being top 10 picks consensus, I just don't think that you go after a second round quarterback. It's not, unless you're going for a project. Like, I'd rather take Joe Milton than Michael Penix. That's just my opinion.
Well, let me just make this argument though for the guys that do like Michael Penix Jr. There are many people that view him as a first-round prospect who's going to go day 2 because of the injuries. But the guy is arguably the best pre-snap processor of any of those quarterbacks in this draft class. He's really good at playing in a structured offense and playing from the pocket. I do think that there is a lot more to like with Michael Penix than maybe you've kind of hinted at while you're discussing him. I also think your point about him not playing well out of the pocket, of course not. He's a pocket passer, and his scheme was very much related to his abilities to play from the pocket. So his sample size of throwing outside of the pocket is smaller than those other guys. So of course it's not going to be as good of numbers outside of the pocket as those other guys. So the Giants, though, again, because of the injury history to Daniel Jones, I don't think they're going to like Michael Penix, but maybe they do. Maybe they want to have a pocket passing quarterback, and then you would like a guy like Michael Penix with a rocket arm and with really quick processing. However, the Giants' offense is not catered to a pocket passer right now. They would have to make changes to their offensive scheme. If they did have more of a West Coast quick passing, pocket passing offense, then I think that you would be happy with a Michael Penix. But because the Giants play a little bit more with read options and a little bit more run and gun. They like to get Daniel Jones on the move on those bootlegs. Again, Michael Penix Jr. in terms of being a scheme fit, probably not the best. And again, the injury history is the main point that I'm going to go back to. But I do like Michael Penix. I think he's got a rocket of an arm. I think he's very accurate on the deep balls. I think that he's really good at processing and reading defenses. All those things that you like from pocket passing quarterbacks. He's the best one in this class, arguably. He is a really good player. However, again, I made my points. I personally wouldn't take him if I were the New York Giants. But we do have a big super chat here from Corp CA. Thank you so much, Corp CA. Really do appreciate it. That's a big one. What if, say, the New York Giants stay at 6 and both Drake May and Marvin Harrison Jr. falls to them? Who do you select? I'm torn, but if I had to choose, I'm going wide receiver. So that would be pretty unlikely that those two guys would be on the board. But if it were me, I am higher than probably most of you watching this on Drake May. I really view him as such a special prospect and think with the right coach in particular, he could be maybe a top 5 quarterback in the NFL if coached properly. And again, situations are everything. So there's a very real chance that he's a bust and he's out of the NFL in 2 years. But in the right situation, I think that's his ceiling. His ceiling is so high. And Marvin Harrison Jr., yeah, has the same ceiling at his position, but stack up the ceiling of a top 5 quarterback versus the ceiling of a top 5 wide receiver. The quarterback is what's going to win you those championships. The receiver would be the complement to winning those championships. So for me, I would go Drake May over Marvin Harrison Jr. because of the positional value. I think that I have Marvin Harrison Jr. probably graded higher as a player, but positional value has to be factored in here. And for me, quarterback trumps all.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you have a guy like, I think Drake May, you're higher than him on him than I am, but I still would take Drake May just as you would, simply for the reason that he has the upside to be a star, right? He has the upside to be your guy, to be the face of the franchise for the next decade. And he's got great size. He can run. He's athletic. He can throw on the move. And he's got good pocket presence. I mean, he's the guy that you want to give Brian Daboll. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys. I would love to give May to Brian Daboll. I'd love to give Daniels to Brian Daboll. I'd even like to see what he could do with JJ McCarthy. It's not my preference, but I'd be curious to see how that would end up. And obviously Caleb Williams would be it's not even really part of the question anymore. But if it was between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Drake May, I go with Drake May based on positional value and the fact that we need to give Brian Daboll a quarterback that is his to mold before it is too late, right? That's really the end of it. That's the end of the discussion there. And by the way, Corp CA, I really, really appreciate the donation as well. And the truth of the matter is like really simple. If we hired Brian Daboll to coach quarterbacks, we hired him to develop a quarterback, and we gave him a 4-year-old NFL quarterback who already had bad habits. And look, he got a lot of value out of Daniel Jones in 2020, a lot more than any of us thought he was going to get out of him. And we have a chance to give him a young player that he can mold, that he can make into a star, and we're going to pass on that opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to pass on the chance to give what Drew Lock just called him a quarterback whisperer. We're going to pass on the chance to give Brian Daboll the reason we drafted him. We're going to pass on giving him a quarterback right now when we have a chance of one of the deepest classes. John Mara said yesterday, this is one of the deepest draft classes at quarterback that we have seen in a long time. That's what Brian Daboll and Joe Shane told him. And we're about to pass on giving Brian Daboll a quarterback to mold and develop and become the face of this team long-term on a cost-efficient deal, a rookie contract for the next 5 seasons. I mean, if the Giants don't take a quarterback, it'll be the biggest shot in the foot, because that is why we draft. That's why we hired Daboll in the first place. We didn't hire Daboll to maximize a receiver. We hired Daboll to maximize a quarterback, to get a rookie, to get a young player that is his to mold, just like they did with Josh Allen. And it would be malpractice not to do it again. You know what I mean? We watched him do it in Buffalo with Josh Allen. Why are we not going to do it with a young player in a draft class as strong as this? It just doesn't make any logical sense to me. And Bill, Tommy DeVito, I'll tell you this right now. The fact that we even got wins out of Tommy DeVito, the fact that we even got competent quarterback play out of Tommy DeVito is a freaking miracle. Okay. It is a testament to what Brian Daboll can do for a young player. You give him a player that has the upside of May. It's a home run, man. That's what you do. You have to give him the chance to make his guy great. And I think, Anthony, you'll probably agree with that sentiment.
I agree with the sentiment that Bill made. I think that Tommy DeVito is his quarterback to develop. I'm rocking with my guy. Tommy DeVito is the future face of the NFL if people would just give him a chance. No, realistically, though, how I really feel about Tommy DeVito, I still feel like he just needs more time to develop. I think that it's wrong that people still continue to write this kid off. He showed that he can win games and play well in spots. He should be a career backup and a good one at that for most teams. That's how they should view him. He's still young, needs to develop, like I said, but he still should be viewed as a Giants long-term potential backup solution at the quarterback spot, in my eyes at least. And who knows, one day down the road, backup quarterbacks sometimes get thrown into situations where they have to become starters. It wouldn't shock me if 10 years from now, Tommy DeVito is starting games in the NFL. He was already that good in a spot, and I know he wasn't like an elite quarterback or anything, but he was winning games and playing decent football as a rookie, an undrafted rookie who barely even got involved with the first team until all of a sudden somebody got injured. I think you got to give credit where it's due. Tommy DeVito played great, and I think long-term he is going to have a career in this NFL. I think that a lot of people kind of writing him off and just saying that, he had a Linsanity run and he's going to disappear. I personally don't think it's true. NFL teams aren't going to forget when he did that. He's going to have a job somewhere for a long time, and I hope that it is with the New York Giants. But if he ends up on the Giants practice squad this season, it wouldn't shock me at all if a team around the league just said, okay, we need a quarterback because we have an injury. We're going to go ahead and sign Tommy DeVito off the practice squad. And maybe that's his foot in the door around the NFL and he gets an opportunity elsewhere. So still rooting for Tommy DeVito. I know a lot of people don't like him anymore because he won those games that ultimately cost us our franchise quarterback. I get that. But you know what? I think DeVito did some great things, at least for a portion of the fan base back then. But let's see what else is in here that is piquing my interest that people are commenting. This one, I'll just say Dable plus May equals W. I've been saying this because Drake May, a lot of his game reminds me of Josh Allen. There are so many similarities to the way that those two play football. And I'm not just talking physical traits and arm strength, but really just the way that they play is very similar. And so I do think that Dable, the way that he got certain weaknesses out of Josh Allen's games, maximize certain strengths, that's why I do really like that fit. And Matthew 415, I like this comment. Nobody's talking about how badly we need corners. We've been talking a lot about the cornerbacks on this channel and saying, like, hey, we need CB2. Giants need to go ahead and either sign somebody or draft somebody. What I think that nobody is talking badly enough about is how good this cornerback draft class is. We talk a lot about Giants going either wide receiver at 6 and then, maybe taking a lineman in the second or third, whatever. We need to be talking more about cornerback at 47, even if the Giants go quarterback at 6, if they go wide receiver at 6, no matter what. The corners that are going to be on the board at 47 in this year's class are going to be on par with some of the wide receivers that are going to be in contention to be on the board or to be selected at 47. You're getting a day one starter at the cornerback position at 47 this year, which is rare that you're able to get a starter that late into the second round. So I just want to throw out there and give my take on that and then kind of ask you, Alex, how high on the priority list is cornerback for you? Does the strength of this draft class make it a higher priority position? Just because if you take one pretty early on, you're probably getting somebody who can start games and play well for you pretty quickly in his NFL career.
Yeah, I mean, right now, cornerback is absolutely a priority. I would love to find a nice draft piece. Honestly, if the Giants go receiver in the first round, I think cornerback at 47 is probable. Mainly because you have a young duo of Deontay Banks and a second round corner. You build around that. You know what I mean? You let him compete. Cordell Flott. You still got, Nick McLeod, who I actually like a lot. I don't think he's like a primary starting guy, but he's a really, really good depth piece. Maybe he even develops into a starting guy. Who knows? So we'll see what happens, but I would love to find a draft pick in the mid rounds if we don't get one in the second. And the truth is that, the veteran groups right now are kind of thinning out. I think the Giants are waiting to see what happens with Darren Waller, but we'll see what happens. Like there could be a veteran. I like Xavier Howard still out there. There are some players. I know like Steven Nelson, he's a veteran. He's still out there. I think he was a Houston last season. So we'll see what happens there. But I wanted to talk about one thing, Anthony. It was kind of so basically, I know you're a big Daniel Jeremiah fan. And I think, we've talked about this before. You like his stuff. And today he was on the Pat McAfee show, and you want to know what he said? He said, I put it out in my last mock draft, and I have 4 quarterbacks going 1 through 4. He says he's been talking to teams that are in the quarterback market and the teams that aren't, and the JJ McCarthy stuff that a lot of teams are really high on JJ McCarthy, and that it's not a smokescreen. So for people that are thinking that the whole JJ McCarthy thing is overblown, it's a smokescreen, it's total BS. I mean, Daniel Jeremiah is like one of the most plugged in guys you can find. And he's like, it's real. Like people really like him. The truth is, I kind of feel like right now I've been trying to talk myself into it because, and the reason I have been, and I know a lot of people are going to like be like, yeah, like screw that. Like I don't want him at all, because there's a real possibility that the Giants end up with him. You know what I mean? There is I'd say if of any quarterback right now, the most probable the Giants end up with is JJ McCarthy. So how do we wrap our heads around that? You know, how, for the people that do not want him, that are really upset, that are like, no, I'm going to hate that move. We're Giants fans, guys. We have to root for our players most of the time. JJ McCarthy is a good kid, right? He's a good, we don't always have to root for them, but you know what I mean? Like, you want to root for them. I want Daniel Jones to be successful. Unfortunately, he just hasn't been. He has injuries, this and that. You know, it's just the damage has been done. If we go after JJ McCarthy, it's not my preference, but I will root like hell for the guy. I will hope to God he ends up destroying any argument I ever made against him. Because the truth is, I just want the Giants to freaking win games. I don't give a crap, you know, who the hell they draft, as long as we win games and they develop the right player. JJ has tools. He's a good kid. It comes from a good background, you know, has obvious great support from guys like Jim Harbaugh, you know, has great things to say about him. Obviously, there's bias there, but other executives have said lots of great things about him. People are seeing him go as high as number 2. It's crazy. I mean, 2 months ago, JJ McCarthy was a second-round prospect, and now he's a top 4 prospect. That one of the most brilliant campaigns I've ever seen. One of those brilliant JJ McCarthy propaganda campaigns I've ever seen of a draft prospect ever. But clearly there's tangible reason to believe that he is that good. You know what I mean? Maybe it isn't just propaganda. Maybe these guys really think he's that freaking good. So I know you have thoughts on that, but
Yeah,
I just
I
feel like
don't
it's
see it
pretty
as
impressive.
propaganda in any way. If anything, it would be propaganda that the media was spreading. The NFL has probably been higher on JJ McCarthy. I don't think he's had this meteoric rise into the top 5. I think he's probably always been there, but the NFL media and fans and the community hasn't caught up to that just yet. And now that you see more people doing more research on him, collecting more data and watching more film, they're getting to the point where the NFL teams who do this for a living, who have been doing this year round on JJ McCarthy, have already been. That's what it really is. So I'm not shocked that it's not a smokescreen, according to Daniel Jeremiah. I think that JJ McCarthy, I said this to you, Alex, if this was 15 years ago and we were talking about a 21-year-old kid coming off of a national championship who played in a pro-style offense, threw well from the pocket, threw well outside of the pocket, he checks every single box for every single NFL GM 15 years ago. But we're in the modern NFL now. We're in a new game. People prefer different things from the quarterback position. The game has changed, so we value other quarterback prospects with higher ceilings better. But if you're looking at those pro-ready quarterbacks, those pocket passers, those winners, JJ McCarthy would have been a number 1 overall pick many years ago. And you have to keep in mind, a lot of the NFL evaluators, the guys in the league right now, don't subscribe to the new way of thinking. Don't look at this modern NFL as being that different from the old NFL. Don't care for the way that the game has changed. They believe in the tried and true method. And JJ McCarthy fits the mold of the tried and true method. 10 years ago, this kid would have been a number 1 overall pick. It wouldn't have even been the conversation. A guy like Caleb Williams running around, doing all the things that he does out of structure, would not have been valued nearly this highly 10, 15 years ago. JJ McCarthy, what he did this past season, that would have been valued highly enough to make him a number 1 overall pick. So that's the way that you need to conceptualize this thing and think, if I were in the seat of a 65-year-old general manager or scout in an NFL room, I would be enamored by JJ McCarthy, because I've been in the NFL for so long and I've been taught that this is the way you scout and these are the quarterbacks that succeed. JJ McCarthy is that quarterback. So that's why NFL teams have been so high on him and the NFL media hasn't been. So I don't think it's ever been he's had some propaganda campaign or some meteoric rise in draft stock. It's just that NFL fans and media finally got around to where the league is on his draft stock. And that's where the league always has been. And that's what you can find if you read enough about it and you read about this rise in draft stock. His draft stock didn't rise from going to the combine. Nothing rose about his draft stock. He's always been considered a first-round prospect in the NFL. It's just outside of the NFL, we haven't viewed him that way. But if you try and take it from that perspective as a Giants fan and look at it from the angle of NFL teams have always viewed him this highly, why haven't I? Why haven't NFL fans? And then you try and look at it from that perspective of, these guys have been in the league for all these many years, have seen the quarterback position from a different angle than fans have. Then you can kind of see why teams are in love with this kid and why he probably will be a successful NFL player. I think of those guys, he might be the safest pick. I don't want him to go to Washington. I don't want to see JJ McCarthy play for the Washington Commanders because I think that they're going to make him a really good player if he goes there. He's a very safe pick in many ways. These other guys, Drake May has a lot of inconsistencies, and you know how much I love him, but maybe he's not as safe of a pick as JJ McCarthy. And maybe fans should start to think twice about how NFL teams evaluate talents versus how members of the NFL fan community evaluate talents. It's a big difference. And so that's why I think, it's important to go up against those narratives of this being a draft rise or some sort of propaganda campaign, because this truly is just the NFL has felt this way about this kid for a long time. And we're finally starting to learn that. So a lot of people are reevaluating him and then seeing now what NFL teams have seen this whole time.
I mean, it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible, but I still have my reservations about his sample size, and I do think that there are legitimate concerns. However, look, if Dable thinks that he is the guy that he wants and he wants to develop and he sees the talent there, I 100% think that Dable knows a lot more than I do. That's for sure. So I'll stick with that. Like that'll be my take for now. I remain skeptical, but if Dable believes that he's the guy he wants to grow and develop, I'm fully on board with it. I'm fully on board with rooting for him and giving him as much of the slack that he needs to become that level of talent, because he is young still, just like Malik Neighbors, very, very young players. But let's talk about one more LSU player here that I was really interested in. Brian Thomas, probably a first-round receiver at this point. If the Giants, for some reason, ended up trading back and getting an extra pick, whatever it might be, is Brian Thomas someone you're interested in? I know he's kind of this vertical threat, but and super fast. But people really think that he could be a special. He has that W1 upside. A lot of people think that he could be. He's kind of being overshadowed by Malik Neighbors right now, but he's a very talented player. Do you think that that's someone the Giants may be eyeing and saying, maybe if we traded up or if we traded back, Brian Thomas could be someone that we really like? Of course, I don't think we end up with him. I think he goes somewhere else. But just in general, do you like Brian Thomas as a prospect?
I like Brian Thomas as a prospect. I've learned through, consuming media, talking with people, I'm not as high on him as a lot of other people are. I felt like his route tree at LSU was very limited, and it's not necessarily his fault. It's because he was playing with Malik Neighbors, so that does everything for you. Like Malik Neighbors runs every single route in the book, is your number one option on the outside, on the inside, deep. He was everything. So what they had for Brian Thomas was basically run a good 9 route. If it's not there, run a good curl route. Just audible into that mid play and keep doing that all game long, because you're more freakishly athletic and fast than everybody else. So you're going to be open. And that's pretty much what he did. Now, I'm not saying that's all he did, and I'm not trying to discount this player. He's still a tremendous player. But I just feel like for the New York Giants, if you want them to get an every down receiver, a guy who is a WR1 and makes plays and can go for 1,000 yards as a rookie, it's not going to be Brian Thomas Jr., in my opinion, in this particular offense. Now, he might go to a different offense. If he goes to the Bills or he goes to the Chiefs, even some team like that at the back end of the first round, yeah, I think he could go for 1,000 receiving yards and be an absolute stud. But I do think there's more coaching involved with Brian Thomas Jr. than a lot of people are willing to admit. So I like him. I'd be thrilled by the idea of him if the Giants were to trade up for him from the second round into the first round, make a big move there. Or if they traded down and they ended up with those 2 first-round picks that people mentioned, or they traded down really far. Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. has all of the physical tools, traits, and athleticism that you drool over out of the wide receiver position. It's just the nuances of playing wide receiver. He's not necessarily there yet in comparison to a lot of these other prospects that you might take in that same range as Brian Thomas Jr. So that's why I would value some of those other guys, and why I do value some of those other guys and am a little bit lower on Brian Thomas Jr. But how do you feel about that, Alex? I think that's an important question. And maybe this is just a good kind of way to ask you this question and ask for your general insight on how you view draft prospects. Do you prefer that these guys with basically the multiple balls of clay, right? These guys with all the athleticism, the measurables, this is exactly what you want from this position, but they lack some of that nuance? Or do you like the guys with the nuance and the technicality to be an instant impact player, though they might be a little bit more limited with some of their athletic traits?
Yeah, I mean, look, instant impact is always great. You love to have those guys, but like I saw that. That's exactly what we kind of saw in Jalen Hyatt, like instant impact. Like he was going to be a vertical threat. Like we were going to exercise that. And unfortunately, and you know what I really liked listening to? Jim Harbaugh said something absolutely phenomenal about the offensive line. Just wanted to sorry, like my brain's kind of like pivoting me in another direction, but he said something really awesome at the offensive line. He said, what's the one unit that doesn't need anybody else to succeed, but everybody else needs that unit to succeed? And he was like, it's the offensive line. Offensive line is the one unit that doesn't need the receivers to play well, doesn't need the quarterback to play well, doesn't need the running back to play well to do well. They are the ones that have to do it. But the receivers need the offensive line, the quarterback needs the offensive line, the running backs and the tight ends all need the offensive line to play well. And I wrote this morning about John Runyon, and I spoke about Jermaine Illuminor, and I was really impressed with, I was breaking those guys down. And the Giants paid $17 million for two players and didn't go after Kevin Dotson or, Mike Onwenu or, those expensive Robert Hunt all got $17+ million per season. And I really was impressed to see the value that they're going to get from those two players. Why? Well, John Runyon, my friends, was a really good left guard before the Packers, for whatever reason, moved him to right guard. I was really impressed to see his numbers before them. We've talked about this before. Runyon actually is going to be an above average pass protecting left guard for us. And I think that's kind of a fact that a lot of people are underrating. And then at right tackle, Jermaine Illuminor, I think he ends up winning the job, despite what the Giants have said. I think he ends up winning that job, and he's a very, very solid player. So, kind of a little bit of a tangent here, but I think the offensive line is going to open up a lot more opportunities for those instant impact players like Jalen Hyatt, like Wandale, guys that we already have. So I would rather go for the guys that are going to have a little bit more developmental upside long-term, because I'm not thinking about 2024. I'm thinking about 2025, 26, 27, when I really think this team is going to come to fruition. I'm excited about it. But, Brian Thomas, I don't really think is an option for the Giants. I think if we go quarterback in the first round, assuming we don't have to give up our 47th overall pick, which we probably will, but if we don't, there's a couple of really, really talented guys there that I think could be not only instant impact players, but also guys that have that developmental upside.
Yeah, I like a lot of the comments that you made on the offensive line. I really like Jim Harbaugh's comments on the O-line that you mentioned there and quoted. They're really eye-opening to me, and it tells me that they might end up taking a tackle over a wide receiver at 5, which again could potentially push Marvin Harrison Jr. down the board. But it kind of one of the reasons that I asked you that initial question of, do you like guys with technical nuance or do you like guys with athleticism? It's one of the reasons that I actually do lean Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr., because I think that there's so much nuance and technicality to Marvin Harrison Jr., makes him the safer pick. But when you really look at like that boom potential with Malik Neighbors, that's what I really get enamored by. But I know that's kind of a contrarian opinion for a lot of people. Before I get to this one comment, I just have to say this was hilarious and had multiple people in the chat laughing, and also had me laughing. But Brian Brown, thank you for the super chat. Would you rather trade for Brandon Ayuk or draft Malik Neighbors / Rome Odunze? I would rather draft one of those two players, but really I would rather do both. And I think that it's possible. And we kind of broke that down in a recent episode. If you haven't seen it, go check it out on the channel. But essentially what it broke down to for me was, with those wide receivers at number 6, if you can't get a quarterback, if the quarterback is out of the option, because I would take the quarterback over all of this, but if the quarterback is not available, I'll take Neighbors / Odunze and be really happy about it, because I think those are excellent prospects. And I'd rather them over Ayuk because you get them on the rookie contract. Ayuk, once you trade for him, you are immediately going to have to pay him around $25 million per season, which is a large chunk of the salary cap. And the Giants still do have, of course, Daniel Jones's contract on the salary cap. So it makes it a little bit tough to kind of trade for Ayuk and get him under the books and without kind of handicapping yourself in terms of your financials. So I like Neighbors and Odunze for that reason. Plus, they're young. The potential is there. Maybe they could be better than Ayuk. Who knows? But the argument would be Ayuk is the sure thing. He's already a great NFL player, and I get that. But I still think that you could do this. Draft Neighbors / Odunze. Wait until training camp or sometime else down the road in this offseason. Take your 2025 draft capital, trade that for a guy like Brandon Ayuk. And so, yes, I think there is an opportunity for the Giants to land both of those players, potentially really load up on their offense and give whichever player is playing quarterback as many targets and as many playmakers as possible. But Alex, I know that you kind of do share the same take with me, but if you have any more nuance to add to that conversation, would you rather trade for Ayuk or draft Neighbors / Odunze?
I was actually just reading something like 2 seconds ago that somebody was saying, I don't know if they have any inside information, that they were getting closer to making a deal with Ayuk in terms of a long-term extension. So we'll see about that. I right now, I'm not necessarily convinced it's going to happen.
I will say on that point, before Pretty Ricky got banned on Twitter, the guy who broke the Brian Burns news, he said that he heard they're not shopping Ayuk. They're actually shopping Deebo Samuel instead. So that's always lived in the back of my head with these conversations, because a lot of people have said, Brandon Ayuk is potentially going to be traded because of the contract situation. We'll see. Maybe there is a sleeper opportunity here for somebody to swoop in and grab Debo. I'm not so sure. I think that the 49ers are going to try their best to hold on to both of those players. But at the end of the day, if Ayuk becomes available, yeah, I'd love him for the New York Giants.
Yeah, I mean, between drafting, look, if we're not going quarterback, yes, I'm going to go get Neighbors or Odunze over Ayuk just because they're younger, cheaper, more efficient. But if we do go quarterback, I wouldn't be opposed to acquiring Ayuk via trade. I don't really like the idea of acquiring Debo via trade, because of his injury history. And hot take, would okay, not in any way, I'm going to preface this by saying, not in any way am I comparing these two players at all. But I'd rather draft Malachi Corley than send substantial draft capital for Deebo Samuel and his injury history. That's a very hot take, but I love Malachi Corley. I freaking love that guy. I think Deebo is amazing. He is incredible. He is one of the best playmakers in the game, but I think the way and the style he plays is not sustainable for anybody's body. You know what I mean? I think that his injuries are going to become more frequent and more serious, and it's going to become more probable that he gets hurt and the Giants are missing him for major swaths of time. I'd rather go with Malachi, younger, durable, similar style in terms of that physicality. They just took away the ankle drop, the hip drop tackle. He's going to feast in the NFL. If he develops as a receiver, he's going to be a monster, and I would love to bank on that upside. Love Malachi Corley. He's one of my favorite prospects in this draft class. Cannot wait to see where he goes and what his role is. And he could be our kick returner too. The dude is going to be a freaking absolute gadget, a weapon and multiple facets. Look, he's not Debo. I'm not comparing him to Debo. No, I'm not. I swear to God. But I love Malachi Corley, and I'd rather use draft capital to acquire a different player than Debo because I just don't think that he's sustainable. I think his body's going to break down soon enough. He's getting older. He's already had that shoulder injury last year that he was battling many different games, and I just don't trust him. I think he'd be going down a similar route as Darren Waller, where you're just hoping he stays healthy, and I don't want to have to hope a player stays healthy. I'd rather go with Ayuk 100%. I think you're in the same boat as with me on that one, though.
I'd rather Ayuk, yeah, but if the trade package is similar, let's say it's the same package that they gave up for Waller for Debo, you don't think that's pretty good value? Because I think a lot of people are going to feel the same way that you
third
do
rounder?
and view him.
But you have to pay him too,
no? It was what, a third and a fifth? No, he's still under contract at
what's his contract?
Let me see. His average salary is $23.85 million per season.
That's
so for a player of that caliber, he's under contract. Only for one more year, though, through 2025.
Yes, you're going to have to pay him. So you're going to have to pay him again. And how old is he now?
For cheaper, though, than the 24. 28. Yeah, he's 28. So you'll pay him for cheaper than that, though, because of his age. And for a third-round pick, I mean, listen, if you're debating the third-round pick for Waller versus a third-round pick for
Debo, of
course,
I'd give that.
Yeah, Debo's better. But I guess that's kind of just the other side of the argument. Like, we're talking about how much are we giving up for these players? You're giving up more for Ayuk than you are for Debo, without a doubt.
Yeah.
If it ends up being a third and a fifth like it was for Waller, I do think it's worth considering, though I have a lot of the similar concerns that you do. And I think that this is a team, the Giants, who need healthy players. And because there are availability questions, maybe they would pass on that price tag anyway for Debo.
Yeah. I mean, he also has a $28.6 million cap hit this season. So I don't even think we could fit that in our salary space, even if we wanted to. I mean, they'd have to either restructure that contract or sign him to a brand new deal. I mean, you could do that, right? You could acquire him and then just rip up the contract and pay him a different amount and extend him and give him more guaranteed money. It could work that way, but I just don't see Debo, his style of play, as sustainable. Especially because if the Giants are losing games and they're struggling and they have to run their offense through him, he's going to get hurt, just like Saquon. He finished last year with 892 yards and 7 touchdowns. I mean, dude, like, to be quite honest with you, that's not worth $23 million per season. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think it's worth it.
And that's why the 49ers are trying to trade him. And I think that's a good point. The 49ers are such good talent evaluators and so good with players. I feel like when they know a drop-off is coming is when they're going to try and trade a guy. So if the 49ers of all teams are trying to trade a guy before a drop-off, you probably have to assume the drop off is coming and maybe
It's
avoid
coming.
making that trade. So, but I do want to just bring Candyman, a big member of the channel, in here. Thank you so much, Candyman, into this conversation, because he said you got to draft a wide receiver. We can't afford to pay big money to that position at this point in our never ending rebuild. I think you make a great point there. The Giants already cashed in with one big splash trade this offseason, going after Brian Burns, paying him $30 million per year. Can you really afford to do that again with Brandon Ayuk, whether it be at the draft or in training camp, whatever? Can you really afford to trade away more draft capital and pay another player almost 30 million, maybe even 30 million? Ayuk literally might find a team out there that gives him $30 million per season because he is a WR1 and that price tag keeps going up with the salary cap. So that's possible. At the very least, it's going to be around 25 million for Brandon Ayuk. I think Candyman makes a really good point here. There are so many good wide receivers coming to the NFL in recent years. Even Jalen Hyatt, let's give him time to develop. Maybe he does end up becoming a solid number 2 receiver for us, and maybe we land somebody in the first round or second round this year that becomes our number 1. I agree with Candyman on this one. While I would love to get Ayuk and a WR1 in this draft, if Ayuk is available for trade around training camp, I still would prefer that the Giants just take a chance on a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds of this year's draft and land somebody that with the upside to be a WR1 in this league.
Yeah, I do think that receiver is definitely essential, but I think Hyatt's going to become a very solid player for us. I think Darius Slayton after the next season probably ends up leaving. He's done a 2-year, $16 million deal, if I'm not mistaken. I do believe that he's probably on his way out after next year. Jalen Hyatt will take over that speedster vertical role, and the Giants will have a new WR1 by then, or at least a new WR that is competent and can work alongside Wandale and Jalen Hyatt, a young group of players. There's a world, guys, and Anthony, honestly, man, this is where I get really excited about what this future could look like. There's a world where we have that rookie quarterback and we have 3 receivers on rookie contracts. We have a running back maybe that we selected in the mid rounds on a rookie contract. We have an offensive line that is composed of several really solid players now. I really like John Michael Schmidt still, and I think the scheme really hurt them last year. And I think that Bobby Johnson was a freaking absolute devil to their development. I'm excited about Carmen Brasillo, and we love Andrew Thomas. This team could be full of young, blossoming talent on rookie contracts by this time next year. And I really feel as though this future could look to turn in a different direction. Like the blink of an eye, we could be talking about this team as one of the youngest, most talented upside offenses in the league. You look at the Houston Texans right now, and you look at CJ Stroud, and you look at, Nico Collins, and you look at Tank Dell, and you look at some of these young playmakers they have, and you think to yourselves, I want something like that. And I think the Giants can achieve something like that. If they get the right quarterback and get the receiver, I feel like we got something here. This draft is going to be huge. I wish we could fast forward now because I am just over all the conversations. But let's talk about Evan Neal for a second. And thank you, Christian Whitehead, as a new member. Appreciate you guys as always. Going to be doing live streams every single week for you leading up to the draft. And of course, live streaming the draft itself. We're super hyped. We got you guys covered on all of those fronts. But let's discuss Evan Neal for a second here, Anthony. What do you think happens with him? I think Jermaine Illuminor wins that right tackle job outright. And I think that Neal probably gets kicked inside to right guard. I think John Runnion's starting at left guard. There's nobody moving him. Evan Neal's going to have to learn how to play right guard because I do think Jermaine Illuminor is the better player. He's the better scheme fit. He has been in Brasillo's scheme for 2 years. He's an above average pass protector, and he wants to be a Giant. You see his tweets. You see his message. I've spoken to him personally. Great guy, really, really motivated, and he wants to be great here. I think he's going to be, and I think he's going to win that right tackle job, and it's going to be a pretty easy win for him personally. I would like to see Neal start cross-training at guard moving forward.
Yeah, and he definitely will start training and practicing the guard position just in case of anything. But I still think the Giants are intent on making him pan out at right tackle, and they want him to be their starter there. So it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if Evan Neal is the week 1 starter at right tackle. You got to keep in mind, Jermaine Illuminor, he also can play right guard. He has the ability to play on the inside. He's done it in the past. So I think that you could see a world where the season starts up with Evan Neal at right tackle, Jermaine Illuminor at right guard, and if he begins to struggle, then they swap them, and Illuminor moves to right tackle because he can do that, and then they try Evan Neal in at right guard. So, and also, this is a good point right here from Craig Robinson. Evan Neal might just say, screw you, I don't want to play guard, put me on the trade block. Maybe a team just comes scoop him up and says, hey, we'll try you a tackle because we really liked your film at Alabama, and we feel like it's the Giants are the problem. You're not the problem, Evan Neal. Let's trade for you. That's also a possibility. But Evan Neal has never played right guard before. He played left guard in college. So asking him to learn right guard while also trying to fix himself at right tackle is a big ask. So while I think that's what the Giants are going to do, have him try and play both of those positions before the regular season, I would prefer if they just had him fully commit to playing left guard or right guard, just have him fully commit, train there, and just move on from the experiment at right tackle, or fully commit to the experiment at right tackle and don't hang over his head that he might lose that job. But it's a really tricky situation here with Evan Neal. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do with them or how it's going to play out, but it is very important that he does succeed in this league and succeed for the New York Giants. That was a heavy investment, the 7th overall pick. The Giants need him to start playing better football. And for what it's worth, I still think there's a chance that Evan Neal can turn his career around because of the changes that the Giants are going to make to their coaching staff. And potentially, this is an underrated factor here, who you have playing wide receiver, running back, and quarterback for you does sometimes impact how you play at the tackle spot. You know, how your quarterback drops into the pocket, how he senses pressures, how quickly the ball can get out to those wide receivers. All of that does factor in as well. So as the Giants get better, I do think that Evan Neal could continue to get better himself. But that pretty much wraps this one up. We have been talking for over an hour, and we covered a lot of topics. And we do, again, want to say thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you for 20,000 subscribers. Once again, this isn't our 20K special live stream. We've got it cooked up, or it's cooking up. It's in the oven. We're going to take it out in a few business days, and then we're going to hit you with a live stream soon enough. So stay tuned to the channel for that. But really, guys, can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for the 20,000 subscriber milestone, and we are just getting started. Want to reassure you, 20K, that's going to be nothing to us in due time. Come along with the ride with us because we're planning on taking this thing pretty far. So I'm going to wrap this up, but Alex, any closing thoughts before I do so?
I mean, guys, I really appreciate it. Everyone kind of tuning in here. We love the live stream. It's really, really fun to have some back and forth with the fans and build this community and get your takes and argue about some things, have some good debates, talk to you guys and answer your questions. We really appreciate that. I'm kind of in my bat cave right now. It's really dark. It's kind of wild how dark this room gets, but nonetheless, it will get brighter one day when we draft a quarterback, hopefully, or even Malik Neighbors. I'm really excited about the future. This is going to be really, really fun next month as we go through all of the buzz, all the nuggets, all the news. And the truth is, it's going to be super exciting on draft day. And we're like someone just said in the chat, can't wait for the draft live stream. Me too, man. I'm going to be freaking sweating. I'm going to have a nice drink next to me. I'm going to be taking sips, and I'm going to be excited to see who we get at number 6. And unlike last year, Anthony, we were waiting for like 2.5 hours to get to pick 24. We are going to be really early off the clock here, and we're going to be super excited to watch this entire draft unfold before our eyes and see where the Giants go and see what the future of this team looks like on offense. Because honestly, this could define Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll's future with the team, and we're going to be here for every freaking second of it. We appreciate the love. We're just getting started, as Anthony said. A lot more growth and fun to have on these live streams and on the channel moving forward. Appreciate you guys as always, and Anthony, I'll let you kick us off.
Yeah, thanks again, guys. Hope you enjoyed this live stream. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode or a live stream. Comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. But that'll pretty much do it. Make sure you follow us on social media as well at Fireside Giants, and we will catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.